Welcome all to this session. And in today's session, I am going to cover creating resources and services using PowerShell. In previous session and the future session, we are also going to cover creating resources and our services using Portal or Cloud CLI. But right now, I'll just show you an overview of all the steps we need uh, creating using PowerShell. So now let's get started with this session, and I'm also have a PowerPoint. Basically, what is the steps, right? So steps to create the resources in that order. So we have to follow the order. First you set up the environment, like you want to turn off warnings and messages on the screen. You have to connect to your Azure connection. You have to use username and password, and you have to create a resource group. After you create the user group, as I said before that, you can also create subscription active directory user and roles, and there's a one to many and uh, relationship between subscription active directory users, subscription and resource group. But then again, the resource group has to be created in a location, and all these resources which I'm going to create for networking, storage, and compute, they are all going to reside within a resource group and a location. Let's say East US in this example. Then I'm going to create the VNet and VM, and then on top of that, all the resources related to my traffic flow and security uh, can also be created. That is the DNS, the firewall, the load balancer. Okay, so a network interface card with the public IP. So let's create that, and then also we are going to cover some advanced topics. This is creating a SaaS token on a Linux VM, creating a storage account, creating a SQL Server database. Of course, the server has to be created before the database. And then after all this is done, we are going to move into the AZ203. All this is part of 104, that administration, that's the backbone of Azure. And then we go into 203 and 400 and 300 and 201 later on. But our primary focus is to cover all these things today. So what are all the steps now? I'm going to open my PowerShell and have broke down the master script or the parent script into many small scripts or child scripts, so I can explain to you step by step. So the first step is set environment. This is breaking change warnings. So unnecessary warnings won't come when you are executing the script. It will prompt you for a resource group name, and then username password is stored inside as a credential object. And once you enter the resource name, it will add a dash RG, and it will create on the location where you want. So these commands and the commandlets, you can see all the locations available using get location format table. Okay. In our example, you can also create two resource group, UAT and production, and then you can move the resources from UAT to production. So the VNet peering. right? If you have two different VNets in two different regions, you can use VNet peering. But in this example, we are just covering how you create the VMs. You know, one is a front end VM and one is a back end VM, Web VM one and Web VM two. And then of course you can have load balancer or availability set and availability zone in the front end, and then load balancer, internal load balancer. In the front end, you are going to have public load balancer. In the back end, you have going to have internal load balancer. So we are going to create that. So let's get started, and in time permitting, we will go all the way to um, the documentation and other topics as well. So now this I have created all the script in my PowerShell folder. So these are all the scripts, and I have a README file. So this README file says that this is the order you have to execute, like my diagram. First, create a set environment, create resource group with a name and location, and then create VNet with subnets, and create the energy rules in that, and then create the bastion. Before creating bastion, you have to assign a network interface card and public IP address, and then create the Windows VM. Okay, and after Windows VM, you can go ahead and create the availability set or availability zone and load balancer on that, right? Public load balance. And then you can create the SQL Server and the storage. Then you can create the Linux VM. And finally, you can also go and create the route table. So this is all the README file. And then at the end, we'll go to clean up all our resources and resource group before we log off. So let's get started. My first thing is set environment.ps1. So what is it doing? It is suppressing the messages. Then it is calling the username, password, and create. Then it is getting ready for whatever the other steps. All the other steps can call this script, right? So let's see what the create resource group is doing. It's just going to create the resource group with the name and location. So now first step I'm going to execute set environment. It is asking me, so I'll say training. Okay. So I'm going to create in my favorite location, East US. And now the next step is creating the resource group. So I'm just following the same steps I put in my README file as well as my PowerPoint presentation. So the resource group, again, it's training. So that's it. It's got the resource group got created. The next third step is creating the VNets, right? So the as per the CRDR notation, create the VNets. So it attaches a dash VNet to the training. It calls the set environment. It execute the allow RDP to the and attach them to the front end. NSG and subnet. It attaches the NSGs to the subnet, right? And then for the backend, it's called allow SQL network security group. Port is 1433 and here is 3389 for HTTP. Then it will go into attach that to the backend subnet, which is attached to the finally created to the VNet. The VNet is I attach all the subnets to the VNet, right? So these are the first front-end subnet and back-end subnet and front-end energy, back-end energy attached to the VNet. So let's execute this. VNet PS1 and resource name is again training. Almost all the resources need the resource group name. So when I call the master script combining all the scripts, I just have to enter it once. What is the resource group? If it's a new one or existing one. But in this case, that's it. So it created, it returned the VNets. It got training VNet, and it has a front end subnet and a back end subnet, which got created, and all the other information like address prefix and subscription is part of this thing. So now, what's the next step? Next is creating the bastion. I don't want people to log into my public IP address directly, so they have to come through the portal for security purposes. So they have to use the bastion. So what's the bastion doing? It is as per the CIDR notation, it is taking the next IP address 3.0, and it is using creating the public IP address. And then it is attaching that public IP address, and then finally the virtual network is created. And let's execute this. Just say yes. Just take a few minutes to create the bastion. In the meantime, we'll see what is the next step after the bastion. We creating the Windows VM. That also time-consuming process. Now, this step by step, we are going to create the storage and SQL Server after this, and then Linux VM and load balancer, and finally, and the user-defined route and availability set. So now, if I have to execute this using my script, in a one shot, right? I can do that also. This is a script, but I have to explain to you step by step. If you enroll in the course, I will send you a copy of all this Word document, PowerPoint, so you can practice this once you enroll as a my student or a training partner of certified solutions. So while this is running, I'll open another window. I go to the PowerShell directory again, where all my scripts are there, and I'll just see what this Windows VM script is doing. So it is just creating a web VM1 and a DBVM1 with the front end subnet and back end subnet. And I can also grep if web VM2 is getting created somewhere. Yes, it's getting created in create all resources.ps1. So I'm going to add the web VM2 also in case I want to add it to a load balancer or availability set. I go to my PowerShell thing. I'll just modify, add an extra VM, or it's not required, but I'm just showing you for in case I want to add extra VM to my script. All I have to do is copy it and paste it here. All the other parameters remain the same except the name changes to web VM2. Okay, so that's it. Save it, exit, and then let's see if this bastion is still getting created. Yes, it's still so. So we can go ahead and create this create Windows VMs while the bastion is getting created. So go backslash. It is going to ask me the HUS. That's it. It's so the set environment actually took care of. So now let's see if the VMs got created. Had complained about the bastion. So let me see all the resources which are created already so far in my training resource group. So this script actually lists all the resources in my subscription, right? So my resources, this one is the training resource group. It is in a format table and right here. So WebVM1, WebVM2, DBVM1 got created. Bastion also is getting created. So I just leave that, go to my next step. After the WebVM1, I can go to my storage account. Okay, create storage, right? So what is it doing? It is just create the storage for me. I'll say already storage account is there. So let's modify that with the name. So it is unique. So I just say certified storage, certified solutions SA1. So that's good enough. So I'll just create this. So it is using Azure AZ storage account. Previously, you used to use Azure RM, but you can also use Azure AZ. Almost all the commandlets can be changed from Azure RM to Azure AZ, new AZ. Create storage PS1. storage is getting created, and the bastion got completed. It is got some error, but we're going to fix it. Public IP quota, I think the number of quota, so we have to delete some resources. Okay, so we are going to just check what other resources are there. Storage account got created successfully. Um, this quota for the public IP address, so we have to delete some public IP addresses in order to create more. The training resource group, then there's other resource group. So I'm going to delete the other resource group. So just go and delete all the resources on the back. So now let's list all the resources now. So you can also watch it using Network Watcher. I'll show you that after we create the resources. If you see, this resource group is in deleting status. So our public IP addresses are getting released, so we can start create other resources while that is happening. So now the next step is create SQL Server. Okay. Uh, After storage, I can create SQL Server. Let's see what are the steps it is doing. So basically, it is creating three SQL servers: Tiger SQL Server 03, Tiger SQL Server 01, and Tiger SQL Server 02. And on top of this, you can do all kind of high availability options like always on availability group and stuff like that. But first thing is creating the servers and then a database. Okay, on that one. And so let's go ahead and execute it. So it is asking username, password, Azure user. So you can connect to SQL Server using SQL Server Management Studio. Once you allow the firewall to connect to the client IP address, and you can also connect to the storage account using Storage Explorer. So I'm going to also show you that SQL Server Management Studio SSMS you have to connect, and then Storage Explorer, Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. The beauty of Azure cloud is you can keep terabytes of data on the cloud, and it stores in a compressed format in blob storage. And later recordings, we are going to cover the storage in more in detail, SQL Server in more in detail. But as of now, you just see that the resources which you created, we can connect using a GUI option using Storage Explorer and SQL Server Management Studio. So the SQL servers are getting created now. There's a load balancer and then availability set. So let's see what the load balancer and availability set are doing. Load balancer, as I said, public load balancer is used for connecting the web VMs, distributing the traffic to the web VM. So load balancer subnet is getting created. and then backend address pool, you're going to add a VM to the backend address pool, and then to the front end, and then you had the health probe. So those are the commands which is getting created, and the unique subnet is a unique ID number per CIDR notation. So let's create load balancer, and here using Storage Explorer we can connect to automatically. My subscription is getting log into my subscription, and yeah, so here it is. So I can upload any of my and it's also connecting to my SQL server here. So we'll come back to the SQL server after we finish creating here, right? So now let's create the load balancer here. Create a load balancer.ps1. Okay, it's giving some error. We're going to fix it, and then create availability set. So resource group name, location, name. Okay, so the syntax is for availability set is here. First position, if you see, first position is resource group name, second is name, third is location, platform update domain count, platform fault domain count. Okay, by default, the update is 3 and fault is 5. Am I right? So we have to modify this. First parameter is resource group name, second is name, third is location. So I'm going to just keep the name here as training availability group, and location is location, platform update domain count is 5 and fault domain count is 3. I think that is the default option, so let's create it. Yeah, so we are going to fix that. Now let's see. You can also create the IIS once the web servers are connected. We are going to automate. So all this we are going to do using the portal also. So install Windows feature. This will add the IIS to the web. Okay. So now let's see what happened here. The training resource group got created. SQL servers are getting created there. Okay. And like I said, so all these steps are put in my master's script. It is called create all resources. So I'm going to use that one also. Okay, so let's create all resources. So I'll just say dot backslash create all resources. Yes, one. And only once it is going to ask the resource group name, I'll say learning. Training is going on and learning is going on simultaneously. So learning East US. That's it. So it goes and does all the steps in one shot. So I just showed you step by step, and now combine all steps, right? So here we are also going to see how to connect to the SQL Server, because it is getting created. So you how to connect to the storage account to Storage Explorer here. So this is my storage account. So I can add a blob container here. I can upload a blob container here. So you can upload here using tables, file shares, blobs. So I'm going to upload a file. Go to my pictures. So any picture I'm just going to take. I can upload anything. It is asking VHD extension. Anyway, so you can upload using this. Uh, Again, PhD file. So we'll come back to this in more detail in the future storage account and SQL Server account chapters. Um, so that's a thing about the Storage Explorer. Okay. Now SQL Server, what is I created a Tiger SQL Server 1, right? It's all lowercase. Now let's go and see in our network watcher, uh, and then of course we created training resource group. We also created learning resource group, right? So we'll go here, we'll go to network watcher, and we'll go to topology, training resource group. So the training resource group, only this things got it's showing Bastion got created. Now what about learning resource group? All the VM and the Bastion subnet, front end, back end subnet got created here. Okay. Now let's use PowerShell to list all my resources, right? List all resources.psl. There's a limitation on the number of public IP address if you're using your subscription, right? For only for training. Right? See, all this got get created here. Learning, and then they got in training. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this session. If you are not enrolled in the course, please pay the fees so you get access to all the quality videos and then live sessions, live project. as a gold member or platinum member, you can enroll. This is the VMs. So now let's connect to Tiger SQL Server 01, right? We'll go and see in training resource group. There's a Tiger SQL servers, Tiger SQL Server. So I can create a database here. Um, but before I can create failover groups, I can create elastic pools, which I'm going to cover in the future topics. But Tiger SQL Server overview, show firewall settings. So I'm going to add my client IP address by default. So this is my IP address. So I'm going to add that, save it. This is my client IP address, right? And what is the overview of the IP of this? Okay. Anyway, it's added. So let's go Tiger SQL Server 1. It's all lowercase. Tiger SQL Server. Yeah, if you are enrolled and a paid member, you are going to get live support. Any errors you have, you submit us, and we'll guide you to do all these things, right? So now the SQL Server is getting connected, all the resources. So lastly, before I log off, I have to clean off all the resources, right? So yeah, let's so I'll clean off all the resources using remove, right? dir backslash remove resource group. So first I'll remove the training. You don't need to specify the location to remove, but it is removing training, and now I will learn it. I said, so all the resource group are getting created, so I can show you using list all resources now. Any comments, feedbacks, improvement, please private message me on my WhatsApp group um, number, either to Vikram Arcot or Certified Solutions. Thank you all very much. So I'll say just list all resources. So here you can see all the resources are getting deleted. The public IP addresses can be reused now. To see this, both the training and learning are getting deleted, and then all these resources which were created in the training and learning will also get created. So I hope you enjoyed the session, and I look forward to in the future recording. Thank you.